गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रजनंदन जय यशोदनंदन जय ब्रजनंदन जय यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रजनंदन जय यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय राधा माधव श्री राधे जय जय निताय जय गौर निताय पतित पावन गौर निताय जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपदा Hare Krishna. So we'll start with prayers. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutat Padkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tvam Sajivam साद्वैतम सावधूतम परिजना सहितम कृष्ण चैतन्य देवम श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमों विष्णु पादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णा प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरत से नमः हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नीलाचल निवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्रा सुभद्राभ्याम जगन्नाथाय ते नमः वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So today we are going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 5, verse number 9. I just recite the verse and then we'll discuss. प्रसूति मिश्र स्त्रिय उद्विग्न चित्ता उचुर्विपाको वृजिनश्येव तस्या यद् पश्यन्ति नाम दुहितॄणां प्रजेशा सूतां सतीम् अवदधयाव अनागाम्। प्रसूति मिश्र स्त्रिया उद्विग्न चित्ता उचुर्विपाको वृजिनस्येव तस्या यत् पश्यन्ति नाम दुहितॄणां प्रजेशा सूतां सतीम् अवदध्याव अनागाम्। प्रसूति मिश्रा स्त्रिया उद्विग्न चित्ता उचुर्विपाको वृजिनस्येव तस्या यत् पश्यन्ति नाम दुहितॄणां प्रजेशा सूतां सतीम् अवदध्याव अनागाम्। Prasuti Mishra, headed by Prasuti, Striya, the women, Udvigna Chitta, being very anxious, Uchu said, Vipaka, the resultant danger, Vrijinasya of the sinful activity, Eva, indeed, Tasya, his, means Daksha's, Yat, because, Pashyantinam, who were looking on, Duhitrinam, of her sisters, Prajesha, the lord of the created beings, that is Daksha, Sutam, his daughter, Satim, Sati, Avadadhyau, insulted, Anagam, completely innocent. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnarvin, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prasuti, the wife of Daksha, along with the other women assembled, became very anxious and said, this danger has been created by Daksha because of the death of Sati, who, even though completely innocent, quit her body as her sisters looked upon. Purport. Prasuti, being a soft-hearted woman, could immediately understand that the imminent danger approaching was due to the impious activity of hard-hearted Prajapati Daksha. He was so cruel that he would not save her youngest daughter Sati from the act of committing suicide in the presence of her sisters. Sati's mother could understand how much Sati had been pained by the insult of her father. Sati had been present along with the other daughters, and Daksha had purposely received all of them, but her, because she happened to be the wife of Lord Shiva. This consideration convinced the wife of Daksha of the danger which was now ahead, and thus she knew that Daksha must be prepared to die for his heinous act. I am also asked to go through the verse number 10, so I will just read through it. Yastva antakale vyukta jatakalapa swasula suchi arpita दिग्गजेन्द्र वीतत्य नृत्यति उदितास्त्र दोर्ध्वजाना उच्चात हास स्तनयितनु भिन्न दिक्का. Yeah, who? Lord Shiva. Two, but Antakale, at the time of dissolution, the Vyukta, taking scattered Jata Kalapa, his bunch of hair, Swasula, his own trident, Suchi on the points, Arpita pierced, Big Gajendra, the rulers of the different directions, Vitaya scattering, Nrityati dances, Udita upraised, Astra weapons, Doha hands, Dhvajana flags, Ucha loud, Attahasa laughing, Stanayitunu by the thundering sound, Bhinna divided, thick the directions. Translation. At the time of dissolution, Lord Shiva's hair is scattered, and he pierces the rulers of the different direction with his trident. He laughs and dances proudly, scattering their hands like flags as thunder scattered the clouds all over the world. Purport. Prasuti, who appreciated the power and strength of her son-in-law, Lord Shiva, is describing what he does at the time of dissolution. This description indicates that the strength of Lord Shiva is so great that Daksha's power could not set in comparison to it. At the time of dissolution, Lord Shiva, with his trident in hand, dances over the rulers of the different planets, and his hair is scattered just as the clouds are scattered all over the directions in order to plunge the different planets into incessant torrents of rain. In the last phase of dissolution, all the planets become inundated with water, and that inundation is caused by the dancing of Lord Shiva. This dance is called the Pralaya dance or dance of dissolution. Prasuti could understand that the dangers ahead resulted not only from Daksha's having neglected her daughter, but also because of his neglecting the prestige and honor of Lord Shiva. So, Hare Krishna. So, this is a very Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Is my voice audible, Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu. Audible, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. It's clear.
So, this is a very wonderful verse where the condition of an conditioned soul, which is represented by Daksha, is represented. So recently we had a very wonderful association of His Holiness Bhakti Dhir Damodar Maharaj in temple. So Maharaj, on different days, he touched upon various different crucial topics relevant to our spiritual life. So one such topic which Maharaj was talking about was art of tolerance, where Maharaj was speaking that how sometime a living entity momentary mistake can cause such a great disaster. Just one moment of mistake can lead to such a series of consequences of inauspicious activities. So Maharaj, in the art of tolerance, he was telling there are different levels of tolerance, what we have to tolerate. Of course, we have to tolerate the heat and cold. We have to tolerate other people. We have to tolerate the so-called happiness and distress of this world. And Maharaj was telling that one of the most crucial tolerance is to tolerate ourselves. Because we are practicing spirituality sitting within the body, which is filled with all the different impressions and desires from so many lifetimes. Our senses are tainted with so much of sense gratificatory tendencies carrying out from so many lifetimes. Yes. So while a person is sitting within such a body, how much he has to tolerate? Imagine sitting in near a garbage depository, yes, where all the garbages of the city is deposited. How much one has to be tolerant, because so much of smell will be coming, So many flies, they will be flying here and there. So how much one has to tolerate? Similarly, we are also sitting in this such an obnoxious body, which is not only grossly uh, like tormenting, but also the different desires of the mind, the different tendencies of the mind keep biting us, keep tempting us, keep uh, fluctuating. And thus, it's very important that while a person is a sane, a sane person is trying to practice spirituality, he has to be so much careful about his own tendencies that they don't creep out. They will, of course, pop up time to time. They will pop up at the surface of the mind, but one has to be very careful that may it not uh, just come out in such an ugly manner to cause destruction to our own spiritual life and to others' spiritual life. So this tolerance is very important. So this Daksha, thus by his momentarily reaction, a particular action he took, and that caused so much of disaster. Yes? It was just one small action that he he had a function in his house. So many his daughters came. He received them very nicely. But Sati, because she was the wife of Lord Shiva, whom Daksha used to hate like anything, he didn't receive. And on the top of that, at that very moment, he took that wrong decision of insulting Lord Shiva with so much of tormenting words, which practically pierce the heart of it will pierce the heart of any chaste wife. A chaste wife is not supposed to hear the blasphemy of her husband, and she rather chose to commit suicide. And we know all the further consequences which happened, which will be unraveled in the future verses. Yes, so that very momentarily reaction, how much disaster is caused. Sometime we see that. So once I was going through some police station, that the police station, uh, a very nice signboard was there, a very nice slogan was written. The slogan was uh, that one moment of mistake and lifetime of imprisonment. So sometimes these people who murder or who do all the sinful activities by which they are put into prison, sometimes it's just a momentarily action, that's all. Just at that very moment, they chose to act in a wrong way. Somehow their anger took over them. Somehow they came completely under the trap of their mental desire, and they reacted in certain way which lead to very very deadly consequence. Yes, in our shastras also we see this Indra. You know, so Indra made just a momentarily mistake. He was sitting in his very nice cozy palace, surrounded by so many apsaras, trying to enjoy heavenly pleasure, and suddenly Brihaspati was passing. Yes, so as the Brihaspati was passing, he was not uh, in a mood to respect him because he was so much drowned. And when Brihaspati just passed away, he realized, oh my God, my guru came and I was so much drowned into all this heavenly pleasure. I couldn't respect. What a great mistake I have done. And he was able to foresee the deadly consequence which was awaiting him. But it was too late for it already, because the demigods have got higher intelligence, higher uh, ability. So the responsibility is also very high. So, but just for that momentarily action, he has to face so much of consequences. He lost his kingdom. He has to run away, at so many places. He became powerless. he was defeated by the demons. So many things happened, consequently. Just one moment of mistake, how much price he had to pay. Similarly, we have an example of Chitraketu Maharaj, who later on became Vritrasur. This Chitraketu Maharaj, he was just passing through the plain, along with surrounded by so many wives. But he was so Krishna conscious, singing the glories of Shankarshan, and he was passing through Kailash. And just one moment of that comment, that lit that particular moment of just one comment, because he saw Lord Shiva, who was making Parvati Mata sit on his lap and giving a lecture on Vairagya to so many renounced people. So Chitraketu Maharaj was actually glorifying in a very humorous way. He was trying to glorify Lord Shiva. But Parvati Mata took it in another way. And we know that what further consequences came. Such a great devotee, who was king, so much happy in his bhajan, in his Krishna consciousness, but he had to take the body of the demon. Of course, although our Acharya says that it's a great boon, but but on the practical level, this is the lesson we can learn. Just one moment of mistake, how much disaster it caused, in the life. So that's why one of the very important aspect of tolerance, which Bhakti Dhir Damodar Maharaj was focusing, was to sometimes tolerate ourselves, because you know, because first of all, honesty, first of all, the acceptance that yes, I am bad, I am filled with all the wrong desires. So the first step is to gain that knowledge, by which we can see ourselves separate from that desire, ourselves as a pure spirit soul of the Supreme Personality, the part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and clearly able to see that these are the foreign elements which have somehow caught my heart, caught my mind, although I am a pure spirit soul. Yes. So and thus to be so when we see ourselves separate from those desires, after that we have to very honestly acknowledge that although I see myself theoretically separate from that desire, but still I'm sitting within the body of that desire. So at any time it may creep into, and try to torment me, try to take over me. But I have to be very, very careful. Yes. So so that's why knowledge is very important, because that torchlight of knowledge can only separate us from that desires. And then when that desire will try to attack us, will try to overcome us, we'll have right intelligence to say no to it. We'll have right intelligence to see that if I react on that desire, if I react on that impulsive thought which has come in my mind, now how much consequence I will feel. And Maharaj was further saying that it's not so easy. It requires a higher taste. It requires immense Krishna consciousness. Yes, to be able to say no to that waves of desire which are rising within the ocean of mind. Yes. It's very difficult to say no. So one requires very strong stability in Krishna consciousness to be able to say no to it, and just to tolerate that attack, just to tolerate that uprise of waves for certain amount of time. Yes. And we find that when it that if we don't react to it, we just allow little time to pass, we find that, oh, it was just a manipulation of mind. The situation was actually not that tough. Unnecessarily, I was becoming too much reactive. Yes, provided we don't react on it. If we react on it, then though we have to just suffer the consequence. Even those people who have done such momentarily mistakes, later on they lament like anything. They say ki what was the need, just like uh, recently I heard the news that some husband and wife, they had little quarrel, and just in that outrageous situation the husband took the knife and simply stabbed the wife, you know so so just a little uh, misunderstanding and people become so outrageous, but if that person would have little bit tolerated it, okay, let me somehow maybe take shelter of something else, or whatever practical step he may take. It may not be exactly spirituality, but after some time he will realize that the situation was not that tough that I have to react in such an ugly manner. Yes, the way I reacted, actually it doesn't you know, support the situation. Situation was not that tough, that I lead to so much of making my entire life miserable for that little situation which happened at that time. Yeah. So, so this is an important principle we can learn. So now moving to the next part of our discussion, which Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport, is that it's not that he Daksha acted in that way at that very moment that is there, but it was also the result of his narrow mindedness in looking at Lord Shiva. Yes, because that particular action, whatever we take, it's not that we just reacted at that very moment. It is the result of so many years of contemplation, so many years of the mental shackles which we have tied to our mind. So just because, so those regular contemplation, regular training of the mind in a particular way, that only channelize the mind in such a way that when a peak time comes, we react in a very, very ugly manner. So nothing in this world happen just in the fraction of a second, or just in a fickle, it doesn't happen like that. Everything is a process. So even what Daksha reacted, it was actually a very many years of his hatred towards Lord Shiva, which he constantly meditated in his mind for many long years. And that particular moment, all those accumulated hatred is just drained out in a very furious and in a very ugly manner. So, uh, so that's why our shastras warn us that we cultivate uh, dhyato vishayan pumsa. At the very level of contemplation, we have to cut down any negative thought, because once the thought comes, then you contemplate. That contemplation, it becomes even more condensed, and then it takes a particular desire, and then desire takes a particular action, and that action further lead to uh, respective reactions. So that's why our Shastra warn us that better stop it at the dhyato, at the contemplation level only, because the mind is very sukshma. The mind is very finer element. Whatever we meditate, the mind takes that shape. If something is very soft, just like if I have a solid, just like if I have pen, no matter what I do, it will not break. But if I have a water, the water is finer. If I do water like this, it will turn like this. If I do water like this, it will turn like that. It's still the air is still finer. No matter at what you do, the air will change its shape. Air will change its volume. Air is still more finer, and much more finer than all the gross elements, the subtle elements. Mind. So mind is such a fine element that whatever little thought input you give, the mind mold itself in that way, and it starts running in that direction. It's such a fine element, and then once it starts running, we contemplate, it starts running in that direction, and then to again bring it back, it's a very tough time. It may take a very long time. Yes, and that's what Daksha did. So sometimes the offenses which happen, The offenses where we sometimes offend a devotee, we offend some people, it may not be result of that particular moment. Yes, that particular moment also matters, because um, it's a moment to moment choice, but it may be result, accumulated result of so much of contemplation. We may be contemplating, oh, that devotee is not good, see, he is doing like this, and all those things. And year by year, month, it just accumulates, and one day it may come out, in a very deadly offenses, which may ruin our spiritual life. Yes, so that's why we have to be extremely careful of our contemplation, and especially one of the problem with Daksha was that he was actually very narrow minded. So in our shastra there are two type of person. One is Mahatma, Mahatma means very big Atma. Big Atma doesn't means that his size is big. That means his consciousness is so broadened. He's a broad minded person. Whereas there is a Sankuchit Atma, the one conditioned soul, is very narrow minded. Such a narrow minded that he is unable to fit, other people within his framework of mind. Yes, he starts uh, building his own definitions, what the world should be, how the people should behave, and he starts expecting in that way. And anybody who doesn't fit into that category, he makes that distinction. He's my friend, he's my enemy, he's like this, he's good, he's bad, and all those things. So Daksha is like that. So uh, he had a certain conception, he had a certain thought of what life should be, what does it mean to be a good person. And Lord Shiva was actually not fitting into his brain, and that's why he used to hate Lord Shiva like any. He had envy towards Lord Shiva. He used to criticize Lord Shiva. He doesn't take bath. You know, he is like this. He associates with ghosts, snakes. He is not clean, and all those things, because he had a certain definition of what does it mean to be a respectable person, a good person, and where Lord Shiva was actually not fitting into. Yeah. So this is the narrow-mindedness. So sometime in our life also we can see, in a devotee community, sometimes we have a certain conception. Devotee means he should be like this, and this conception we have not formed because of shastras. We have, of course, we have taken some shastric input, but we have combined our own mental, stigma, our own mental framework, into that shastric principles, and we have formed our own definition of a devotee. Devotee means, if a person behaves like this, that means he is a good devotee. If a person doesn't behave like that, he is a bad devotee, and all that thing. And thus we start judging people. Oh, he didn't do like this. So sometimes we have seen that if some if someone, who is very good in cleanliness, somehow by good swabhava from before, and he likes cleanliness a lot, and maybe somebody may not be so you will see that, at every moment he will judge people. अरे ये clean नहीं रखता, he's not a good person, है ना. Suppose he a person has done cooking, and while cooking, so some people may cook in a very clean manner, some people may spill the cooking little bit here and there, which has to be cleaned later, and that person will judge, you are not a good cook, is that the way you had to do cooking? And then and so like this we can see that certain things which we are good into because of our previous karma or swabhava, there's certain element which we have good, and then we put that into other person. We start thinking that if other people also fit into this good category, then I will consider them, I will respect them. If they don't fit into my definition, then I don't support them. Like people who may do lot of services, they may see people who just speak and read, and they will think that, "Arey, what a devotee he is. He is just a kacha devotee. He doesn't do service, just a theoretical knowledge." A person who may do a lot of sadhana, he may see a person doing services and he may think, "Arey, he is just a hollow person, just doing external services. But he doesn't have, he doesn't do Prabhupada book reading. So maybe he is not a good devotee." Something like that. Yes. So, based upon our own swabhava, our own mental framework, we form a certain conception and we start fitting people into that: good, bad, friend, enemy, clean, unclean, and all those things. And if somebody doesn't fit, we start disrespecting them, judging them. Yes. And to such a extent, we can imagine sometimes this can grow to such an extent where a person, one, judging is still okay. It's a normal human tendency of a conditioned soul to judge, to find fault. But can we imagine that sometimes such distinction can rise to such a level that a person can start hating other person? A person may, even it can rise to such a level that a person may start to kill other person. A person may want to harm other person. A person may want to destroy the existence of another person. And it happens. The religious fights, where one religion, another religion, they fight. We can imagine that they are unable to fit the different variety of spiritual, consciousness. They are unable to fit. So, okay, we may have religious or spiritual differences, but we can live with that, those differences. But the people, okay, we may not associate with each other, we may not respect each other, but can we imagine people start practically fighting each other? People start killing each other. It can go to such a level. We can imagine the danger of the human psychology. How much? Just like Hitler. Hitler had Hitler belonged to a certain sect of religion, and so they were the Jews, and uh, and other category. So Hitler was unable to fit in his. He was feeling that these Jews, they are the enemy of our ancestors. We should kill them. We should remove their existence and all those things. So can we imagine that how dangerous is the human psychology? Just by it starts with little contemplation, and it can grow like a fire, and that fire can devour the other person who doesn't fit in our so-called category, in our so-called uh, conception or framework, whatever we can say. Yes. So, this is what Daksha did. Daksha went to such a level of his hatred to Lord Shiva that forget about not surviving the differences. Okay, sometimes we may not survive the differences of other people, and we may keep a respectful distance. That is still okay, or we may not associate with them and all that. But it can go to such a level of criticizing others, harming others, uh, forgetting basic humanly activity, basic human nature, forgetting that and ready to harm other person. This is what Daksha went up to. So we can imagine the power of false ego. This is what false ego may, and that's why false ego is considered the greatest power of this material energy. So there are different material energy manifests itself in multifarious ways, in multifarious elements to entangle a living entity, in which the false ego is considered to be the mightiest, when it comes, because it gives a sense of such an identity to a living entity, to think that yes, what I believe is the right, it is my way is the way, and what others are there, they are different, they are not, and all those things. So that's why it's very important that while we live in the devotee community, we learn to adjust the variegatedness. Different people have different nature, different priorities. They may get attracted to different limbs of devotional service. They even within that, within one limb of devotional service, There can be variety of way of rendering services. It's very important that we learn to accumulate it. Otherwise, we will be cause we will be source of offenses, which will ruin our own spiritual life. So this is very, very important, and that's why spiritual world is full of variegatedness, and there the variegatedness is very sweet. It enhances the love of each other. Uh, it doesn't destroy them. So that's why this is very, very important. Another important principle about Lord Shiva, the greatness of Lord Shiva is discussed. How uh, Lord Shiva actually, he is the friend of the fallen. Lord Shiva is a friend of the fallen. He's a very compassionate personality. Yes, and that's why it says that great personality and Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigya na bujhaye. That the activities of a great Vaishnava sometime, even an intelligent person's very heavy, witty intelligence can get baffled in understanding the activity of a Vaishnava. Why a particular Vaishnava is behaving like that. So even very great personalities may misunderstand. We have the in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have example of Pundrik Vidyanidhi. So Gadadhar Pandit who comes to meet him, and he sees that Pundrik Vidyanidhi, he is living such a cozy life. He is combing his very soft, curly hairs in particular way. He is chewing a particular type of pan and all those things. He's sitting on a very nice sofa. Gadadhar Pandit thinks that, oh, is this a Vaishnav? Because Gadadhar Pandit was living a life of such a utter simplicity, just keeping the body and soul together and dedicating entire body, mind, and words to Krishna. So such a person seeing that, and Gadadhar Pandit didn't had any experience that such a person can also be a Vaishnava, such type of people. He had never seen such people very closely, and thus Gadadhar Pandit, in a very transcendental way, he misunderstood Pundrik Vidyanidhi. And later on, but when a particular 10th canto verse about the mercy and beauty of Krishna was recited, that same Pundrik Vidyanidhi sitting on the sofa, combing his hair and achieving the pan, he became so ecstasy. His his love of Godhead was fully activated. It overpowered his entire senses. He started rolling on the ground. He started jumping up and down. Tears were flowing in love for Krishna. And then Gadadhar Pandit realized, my God, I made such a big mistake. I misunderstood such a great personality. So this is, and that's why we should be extremely careful in judging other Vaishnavas. So like Lord Shiva, so his activities are there to actually the way he is, it is actually to accommodate all the fallen living entities. Sometimes the compassion can take such a great height that a person is ready to compromise so many externals. Like Srila Prabhupada himself, in those days, sannyasis would not cross the ocean. They would rather prefer to stay in a dham and spend their last days. But Srila Prabhupada, out of great compassion, out of great urgency to fulfill the mission of his spiritual master, he practically crossed not only one ocean, he crossed multiple oceans. Srila Prabhupada, how much accommodate those hippies into Krishna consciousness? How much he had to become so much of accommodative? He had to live with them. He had to wash their jutha plate, which is actually forbidden for a sannyasi to wash the eaten that plate of such a low class people. But Srila Prabhupada took it. So sometimes Vaishnavas, it's very difficult to identify what they are doing and why they are doing. Because they are perfectly motivated by pure love of Godhead, that sometime they really forget the externals. And that's why uh, Srila Prabhupada used to say that sometimes the Uttam Adhikari, it's very difficult for Uttam Adhikari to preach, because the Uttam Adhikari, he's so transcendental. The Uttam Adhikari is so much of lost in Krishna that first of all he doesn't know that who is fallen, and his external behavior may also not be very much acceptable to the society. That's why sometimes Uttam Adhikari comes down to the Madhyam Adhikari to preach, to to be exemplary in front of the society, to make that distinction: who is fallen, who is envious, who is devotee. That only Madhyam Adhikari can do. And that's why it's we should not judge a Vaishnava by his externals. What they are doing, why they are doing, may be completely different from what we are thinking about them. And that's why in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami, when Sukadeva Goswami was traveling, Parikshit Maharaj was surrounded by so many sages, taking shelter of Mother Ganga, and trying to meditate what is the best way of living the body in complete remembrance of Lord Sri Krishna. And suddenly this Sukadeva Goswami arrives. In what way Sukadeva Goswami arrives? The Bhagavatam explains. He was completely naked. He didn't had a single piece of cloth on his body. Can we imagine? If suppose some great Vaishnava enter in our Iskcon temple like that, even we will be fully bewildered by seeing him. Yes, and his hairs were scattered like that. His body was filled with some dust, and while he was walking, the children were throwing stones at him, and the and everybody was making fun of him. So, in that state, but we see that as soon as he arrived, because the sadhus who were there, because only one pure devotee can recognize another pure devotee. Yes. A conditioned soul may not be able to. A conditioned soul's vision is completely just seeing the external. But when the other great souls, they saw, my God, he has a long hands, he has a lotus petal like eyes, he's looking like the complexion of Krishna only. They were able to know that this is a pure devotee. He's a transcendental personality, just a 16-year-old boy with so much of realization, so much of effulgence. And they made him to sit, they respected him. And then the children and women who were following and throwing stones at him, they ran away in a fear. They were also surprised. Eh? What is this? Such a person, such a uh, insane person, such a mad person. He is respected by all these great sages. My God, we made a mistake, and then they ran away. So that's why this Daksha was unable to respect Lord Shiva, though, because Lord Shiva was not fitting in his frame, because Daksha was Prajapati, he was maintaining a very nice materialistic standards. He had a particular royalty. He had a particular. He was proud of his piety, proud of his all the pious deeds he has done. Such a person to recognize Lord Shiva, very difficult. He was unable to do it. Thus, he ended up. And that's why in our life, we should be very careful in dealing with devotees. Because which devotee is actually advanced, we don't know actually. Because a devotee is, uh, we, we cannot, because our vision of seeing a devotee is depending on what our mind is forming that picture. Our mind has a certain picture. We can only see that only. We cannot see beyond. We see what our mind shows us. We are conditioned. We are not beyond the body. Beyond the body, a person can see so many deeper things. But, so that's why better to be red alert. As soon as we see a Vaishnav, better to be better to respect all Vaishnav, because we don't know who is. That's why Srila Prabhupada said, that if you come to know what the other person is who is sitting next to you will be bewildered. You know, the person with whom you are taking prasad, the person with whom you are sleeping in the ashram, back to back, the person with whom you are doing some jokes in the temple, know, if you come to know the identity of that person, you will be bewildered. And that's why it's the best is to respect everybody. At least if we cannot love them, it's very difficult for conditions to love everybody, to appreciate everybody. At least we can have a respectful distance. That's the minimum we should do. We may not be able to associate with everybody, we may not be able to gel with everybody, but there's a term known as respectful distance. Okay, he's a Vaishnav. Okay, I'm not able to understand him. I don't know what he's doing, why he's doing, but he's a Vaishnav. I respect him. And let me do my own services. Let me have my own group of Vaishnavas with whom I will gel. But respect is the minimum we should have. And even below that minimum is no criticism. Even we may not be able to respect other person, at least no criticism. At least we should not fall into that negative trap. If we are not in the positive axis, let's not go to the negative axis. At least that that trap we should not fall into. So this is a very important lesson we learned from today. So I will just recapitulate what we have discussed till now. So we started with the art of tolerance, how sometimes momentarily mistake can cause such a great harm. We saw the example of Daksha, and how Daksha's one moment of action costed so much disaster in his own life and the life of his own daughter. And that's why art of tolerance means to tolerate ourselves sometimes. And then we discussed about narrow-mindedness of the living entity, how the living entity is narrow-minded while the great devotees are Mahatma. Mahatma means their heart is so big that different varieties, different type of people, they can fit into that heart, big heart. But narrow-minded means, okay, only this way. If a person behave this way, this is good. If a person doesn't behave in that way, he is bad. This is what Daksha's mentality. He had certain conception. So we discuss how to rise over that narrow-mindedness. Very important. As we practice bhakti, and as we have to preach, we have to become a preacher. Actually one has to be very broad-minded. And then we saw that how this same thing can creep into devotee community, where we form a certain conception about what is the definition of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness means this. And if somebody fit into this, he's a good devotee. Somebody doesn't fit, he's not such a good devotee. So that's why. And then finally we discussed about greatness of Vaishnavas. That the great activities of Vaishnavas may bewilder even the great intelligence. And that's why when we deal with senior Vaishnavas, a big red alert. We may not understand them by their external activity of what they are doing, why they are doing. Because sometimes the compassion, the renunciation of a great devotee can take such an external shape which will completely bewilder a normal living entity. And that's why we have to be extremely, extremely careful in judging the great devotees. Hare Krishna. So I think we're already 9 o'clock. So we'll like to close here. If any devotee want to add something or any comments, they can add.
Right, Prabhu. Thanks for very brilliant class. And you brought out very nicely that a single movement, we may commit a small fraction of mistakes also could lead to the big disasters. You just brought out very nicely, and we should not get into any judgmental or any. See, the one who is next to us, we don't know. Maintaining of the distance or the level of devotee. So those points, very clear, bro. Thank you. Thanks for your sharings on this point. Correct.
Hare.
Very nice. Right.
Okay, so if nobody has any other point, we will just end. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samved
Yeah.
Gaur